Hey, I don't know what's going on here. That was so weird. Okay, so, light. We'll need that for later. So welcome. So I have been, so first up, thank you very much for people sending their, flat earth stuff. So that's been, interesting. As I always want to be completely honest, like 100%, right? You don't be disappointed, right? I did go with the full intention of trying to find out, I'm open. I was open, genuinely open. I still think it's a psyop. I'm not gonna lie. I still think it's my original. What's the word? After kind of looking before, I decided that I think it's a psyop designed to distract people, muddy the waters, and just stop people being able to believe anything. Now, don't get me wrong. 100% moon landing was faked, right? But not and yes, there is some evidence to suggest that the NASA imagery is not wholly correct, but I don't necessarily think that then it's a huge leap to then suggest that the Earth is flat. Also, there's lots of things that end up saying like like proving the opposite, right? So it's about the what can we prove. So that is still my hypothesis, and that's what we'll test. We'll test whether it's a psyop as well. Okay, so but I think it's really important that this isn't going to work. I get you to where I am. Why? So I haven't had time to put. So normally when I'm prepping after I've kind of done all the convos, and you've seen it, like I will kind of pull out the information onto a Google Docs, because I will kind of go like here, there, and everywhere, and I try and kind of get it in some kind of useful semblance of information. However, I haven't had a chance to do that today, simply because I've been at the vets with my one of my pooches who has only got a couple of weeks left to where's this? So normally with grok you get like a thing at the side that kind of enables you to jump, but I don't understand why that's not. Where's my little jump bars? So there we go, they're back. Nope, they're gone. Okay, I don't know why they keep disappearing. Okay, so there's some things that I wanted to discuss first. So I think there's some psychology stuff that's really important for us to kind of start with. Okay. Okay, so and this is kind of what I have in the back of my mind quite often when I'm thinking about anything, to be honest. So I am psychologist first, right? So I will use my psychologist understanding of the world in order to kind of figure out what's going on. Let me just put this over here, and then I'm actually looking at you, but on like the half of the screen. Okay, so first thing, and this kind of feeds into one of the reasons why I think it's a psyop, and lots of things are psyops, right? So something called learned helplessness. So learned helplessness is when you end up at that point where there's no point doing anything, right? And there's lots of people who have now kind of got into this learned helplessness mindset. So when you get to that point where you think they've lied about everything, right? We've got the two-tier policing. We've got lots of times when we are fighting back lawfully through the courts. We lose. We have stars taking lots and lots of money and doing lawsuits, and they lose, right? So all of that is to demotivate people. If you're demotivated and you feel helpless, then it's easier for you to be controlled. So what I did, so there's like 7 things I want to go through, but I did ask Grok to kind of take my ramblings and put it into a clean sentence. So what we've got here is learned helplessness is what happens when somebody's repeatedly exposed to situations they cannot control or escape. Eventually they stop trying, even when escape becomes possible. In the information space, it looks like this. People discover real lies. So weapons of mass destruction, COVID origins, intelligence agency misconduct. And after enough of these, a lot of them collapse into everything's fake, nothing can be trusted, so why bother checking anything carefully? That collapse is useful to anybody who wants the public passive. The real skill is the opposite, learning to separate the genuine lies from things that are still solid, so you don't throw away your ability to discriminate. The second thing I want you to kind of hold on to is something which was an experiment in the 1950s. So lots of psychological experiments from the 1950s are really useful, really useful. And again, just because obviously they kind of came off the back of all the shit that the Nazis were doing, 100% unethical. But if you are doing horrific, unethical, torture-based experiments and you come out with an outcome, all of the ethical, non-torture based experiments that have happened after the fact that are now suggesting those experiments that are non-replicable don't actually do what lots of people are saying. Like, they don't then disprove that original effect, right? So if I completely brutalize a person and cause them to dissociate, right? And we know this is how dissociative identity disorder, and then we're going to come on to it, like it's important. Dissociative identity disorder is developed, targeted young children because their mind's easier to break. As if I'm doing all of those things and testing all of those things, like no holds barred, evil person, and come out with like, and this is what happens. And then, since Nuremberg, since all of the kind of decisions that we are going to be nice to people, which I agree with, somebody else comes along and maybe does a little bit of like, I don't know, maybe just takes their toys away, which is psychologically damaging to a child, by the way. And then they don't develop DID. And then they say, well, that torture doesn't cause it because I did the same thing, right? They're not, right? This is why when it comes to child development and then human development and human, the way that humans think and learn, anything after the 60s, I mean, except secret experiments, it's irrelevant. It doesn't count, right? I really need everybody to kind of like hold this in the back of their mind. A lot of the new research into psychology and developmental psychology, and even when it comes to their brain scanning and doing all of that stuff, doesn't matter, right? Because it's all subjective. It's all based on correlation, based on individuals coming forward, individuals who are still alive coming forward and then undergoing testing, right? It's not tracking an individual from conception and then barraging them with awfulness and then seeing how they turn out, compared to somebody who is not barraged with awfulness. And that's exactly what Mengele was doing, right? With his twin experiments. He was evil to the individuals, and they were doing it to pregnant individuals as well. So they weren't just children. They were, they did children, adults in the womb, all of literally like anybody and everybody. And we do have some, natural disasters where you can kind of do opportunistic experiments. But again, you don't know what happened before, right? So you're still kind of like guessing. Anything we do now is guesswork when it comes to understanding humans. So back in the 1950s, Muzaffar Sharif ran the Robbers Cave experiment with 2 groups of boys at a summer camp. The groups are kept separate at first, then put into competition, and very quickly each group developed strong loyalty to its own members and hostility towards the other group, even though the boys were basically the same. Once the in-group and out-group switch is flipped, people start defending their side's narrative and attacking the other side, often more than they care about accuracy. And what we see online, we see tribe, right? We see tribe behavior, right? And the left are very good at this, right? If you are not thinking critically and you are indoctrinated, like this is why, like nothing they do is by chance. This is 70 years old, this research, right? Old research. And we know about this. And this is why they, you see football hooliganism all the time, right? With the COVID, with the refuseniks, right? We were vilified and people felt justified demanding we're put in prison and, charged with terrorism. That's what they were proposing. We were charged with biological terrorism for choosing not to get vaccinated, right? But it was a logical, I say logical, it was something that was just, we can do this. They should do this. They are evil, right? It's just about the indoctrination. Inside the conspiracy world, we have, flat earth, anti-flat earth, disclosure, anti-disclosure. And then once you kind of attach your identity to that label, and this is why labels are really dangerous. Once you attach a label to your identity, then that becomes you, right? So the only labels I have are human, female, Katie. Like outside of that, depends the day of the week, depends how I'm feeling. Genuinely, I'm not organized. Some days I am, some days I'm not. I'm not lazy. Some days I am, some days I'm not. Like everything else is fluid. Things that aren't fluid are gender, right? Or your name. You can change your name, but I'm, human. I'm human. I'm not a cyborg. I'm not a robot. You might be. I don't know. But so this whole concept of in-group and out-group is used expertly by governments to manipulate populations, but also by cults, by religions. Like it you will become fiercely loyal to your group because not doing so could see you ostracized, right? And that's worse, especially if it's now attached to your identity. So I want you to kind of keep the whole in-group and out-group concept in your mind. And these are all going to be important for what we talk about today. The third thing, the null hypothesis. And this drives me insane, right? Not the null hypothesis, but what drives me insane is internet scientists, because what they tend to do is they have a theory and then they find the evidence to prove their theory, right? That's not science. That's not research. That is hunting for information to prove your point, right? That's not how we do science. The best way to do science, and this is why the what is the thing? What the prompt thing? This is why this is so useful and so powerful, because it's based on the scientific concepts of the null hypothesis, right? So the null hypothesis is the default starting point for all proper science. Now, I'm not saying they're all doing it; lots of them aren't, but everybody should be. And what it means is there is no effect, right? No relationship, and the claim is not true. So I keep trying to say to you, I have my hypothesis, and we start from the standpoint that my hypothesis is wrong. And we test and test and test and find lots of information, and then we find out whether it was potentially true, right? If you're doing it the other way round, you will discount information that contradicts what you're thinking, especially if you've now attached the label to your identity, right? It becomes very, very, and that's kind of leads into the Pygmalion theory and self-fulfilling prophecy and stuff like that. So labels are dangerous. We don't touch labels, right? But as a proper investigator, your actual job is to disprove your own idea, right? And then if it ends up true, there we are. Only if the evidence forces you to reject the null hypothesis, i.e. there is no effect, there is no relationship, the claim is not true, then you can accept the alternative. So we also have false positives. So if you lower your standards enough, if you tweak your theory enough, if there's that whole phrase about somebody with like a little bit of knowledge is really fucking dangerous, and obviously that's not the actual phrase, but hopefully you understand what I mean, right? So if somebody only has like a teeny tiny understanding of something, and this is why I think like life coaches can be quite dangerous, therapists can be quite dangerous, because if you only know, okay, so therapists and life coaches, they only know the tools that are going to help somebody get well, right? Or kind of achieve a goal, right? But what they don't know is how to spot or understand human behavior. Right. So if somebody came to me and they were, I fucking hate counseling, but if somebody came to me and they said, oh, okay, well, I'll give you a real life example. One of my clients came to me, they'd been abused at the age 9, but also the person who abused them also ended up, he ended up speaking to his parents, and then he went to prison for it. But actually during the trial, there was multiple victims, right? But he kind of stood up. And so he came to me at like 29, right? And one of the first things he said, well, I had counseling for that. That's fine. I don't understand why I'm so unwell. And this guy was like off the charts unwell, like completely dissociated, believing he was Satan some days, believing he needed to kind of like throw his child, off the top of the building, like through the matrix, like it just completely away with the fairies. And half the time during the sessions, like you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and they're not always in the room. Now, because I know child development, right? That's what my master's was applied child development. And because I know the child development staff came from the Nazis, and the horrific things they did, the information that came out of it is reliable, right? If you are looking at very unwell people, then you need to kind of understand the horrific things that, like, we've got the cause and effect, right? It's not correlation, it's cause and effect we've got there. So I wasn't the first person to support this gentleman. In fact, at the time of coming to me, they had a clinical psychologist, they had a psychiatrist, they had a mental health nurse, and they had a community health person as part of a crisis team, had been in and out of secure units, was on medication up to the eyeballs. And I'm very disappointed in the psychologist, but they may not have been a developmental psychologist, right? So there's lots of different psychology like disciplines. So it's fine. They still should have done a fucking psychological formulation and rejected his, he was adamant that the abuse in his childhood had been dealt with, right? And so we tracked his entire 20 years. I was like, okay. So then what else has happened? And the answer was nothing. Nothing else had happened outside of that extremely traumatic experience, which means his psychosis and his dissociation doesn't match, right? If he's got this experience, then he should have another traumatic experience if the first one is resolved. So that was the only traumatic experience, so it must not have been resolved, right? That's the only logical conclusion from that conversation. Where am I going with this? What was I saying before? Oh, okay. This is why people with a little bit of knowledge can be really dangerous, right? But if a therapist and, clinical psychologist and psychiatrist was like, oh, yeah, well, you had counseling, so it's dealt with. Not one of them kind of said to them, and a clinical psychologist, technically, I say technically because they kind of, did the medical model route, technically it has more knowledge and understanding than I do. And yet they accepted the story that he was telling himself. He was fine. That was dealt with. And it should have been rejected because it's incompatible. It's illogical that somebody with no trauma or trauma that's been dealt with would end up 20 years later like away with the fucking fairies. So anybody who doesn't understand that may accept things as face value, you know, treat the symptoms, because that's what they were doing, treating the symptoms, and he was continuing to decline. So if you only have a teeny tiny little bit of knowledge, maybe a teeny tiny little bit of knowledge about physics, maybe you've watched a couple of videos, maybe something somebody said aligns with something you're kind of thinking about, but it's not through, you haven't built the knowledge through, you know, years and years of tweaking, testing, experimenting, understanding, then you can develop very strange theories about stuff, right? And when it comes to non-psychological human behavior, I haven't experimented very much, but I do my best to try and understand those concepts. Like, this is important. The null hypothesis is important, and this pertains very particularly to one of the videos that I tried to watch, and I had to turn it off after an hour because I was getting very angry with the mistruths that were being perpetuated and sold as lies. And they're not going to be the mistruths that you're thinking about, right? And this is important. They're not necessarily the ones that you probably think, that you're probably naturally thinking. Those are the ones Katie's thinking about, right? So the fourth thing, the p-value, right? Because I want you to understand science, right? Because then you can spot people doing not science. And this is how I spotted a lot of the shit in COVID, because the people weren't doing science, even though they said they were doing the science, right? They weren't using placebos, i.e. sugar pills, to test the vaccines. They weren't testing the null hypothesis. They weren't using the p-value correctly, and they were using correlation and saying it was causation. And anything that does any of those things cannot be trusted. It is not scientific. It's not scientifically rigorous. Love the scientific method. Love creative shit too. But if you're going to advance society, you need to make sure you're doing some things right. So the p-value, I'm grateful for the way that Grok's kind of changed this from my rant into something that you guys can understand, which is good. So p-value is a measure of how surprised you should be by the data if the null hypothesis were true. So a very small p-value means the result would be unlikely if there was actually nothing going on. So it doesn't mean it's definitely true, doesn't mean it's 95% proven. It's just one piece of information about surprise under the null, right? And this is really important because people will often report, p-value of less than 0.05, and that's kind of standard, right? 0.05, so 95%. And they will say p-value like 95% certainty that my hypothesis is correct. That's not what the p-value does. It just says there's a less than 5% chance that the null hypothesis that you were testing is true, right? It doesn't say your hypothesis is true. It just says the null hypothesis is like less than 5% chance of being true, right? Two very different things. And this is what they conflate all the time. People abuse p-values constantly, treating less than 5% as sacred proof, or ignoring how many tests were run, how the data was selected. I mean, they literally use tests that are incompatible with the things that they're testing. Like, legit. Like, if you are reading any scientific literature, first thing you do is you go to the back and you check to see the references that they've used, right? That will give you an understanding of their initial biases. The second thing, and hopefully, so good reference list has got information from both sides of a hypothesis, multi-sides, right? People who are well known to be arguing from completely different angles. Then you go to the conflict of interest and find out who funded it. Right. And if they say somebody has funded it, you go and investigate the funding. Right. If there's no funding, supposedly no funding, the next place you go is to the methodology. And what you do in the methodology is you examine the methods that were used, and then you go and see what it was they were testing. And what you do is you actually see whether the methods they've used are authorized to test those things. And quite often they're not. And the most shambolic thing that I will remember forever is there was a piece of child development research that was new, that was groundbreaking, completely revolutionized the way that we understand ADHD in schools. And the children they were testing were in primary school. The test they were using was designed for children in secondary school. So the results were like, ADHD kids, they really can't understand this information. They really struggle with this. They can't sit still for XYZ time, and they should be by the baseline. There's a huge fucking difference between a primary school child's capacity to understand information and, sit still and do all of those things, and a secondary school. They were literally using a psychometric test, which was not designed. And there were psychometric tests available for primary school children. So I do not even know how that passed the ethics, and I don't know how it ended up as fucking peer-reviewed research, right? But it did. So you can't trust the research all the time. But be careful. So that's the way you do it. You check the methodology, you check what they were testing, and then maybe you'll start reading the information if you're doing proper scientific rigor on things that people are claiming. I tell you, the internet scientists are not doing that shit, right? They're just grabbing whatever headline from the group, from the ether, and then reporting on it. So the fifth thing we need to be aware of, and again, this is really important, and some of this again is baked into the prompt, right? We must start from the position that everybody is deceptive, including me, right? You have to start from that position every single time you're investigating everything, that everybody's deceptive until proven otherwise. So the most useful default is treat every source, including the person speaking to you right now, is potentially deceptive until the evidence forces you to raise your confidence. So the best deception is not 100% lies. It's 90 to 95% true information wrapped between 5 and 10% carefully placed falsehoods or omission. That way the overall package feels trustworthy and the false part travels within the true parts, right? Oh, I didn't know that. You just get this extra bit of information because everything else makes sense. Everything else aligns with all the stuff that you obviously already understand, but there's just that little extra nugget. And if you're new to a subject, you won't know what the extra nugget is. You will not be able to know and discern which bits the new bit, right? It's all new. And so this is why looking at the true things they said is not a defense. So you have to examine the specific claims that actually matter. So the examples I gave to Grok to kind of churn out neatly for me. 5A, in 2021, it was publicly stated the British Army 77th Brigade, which is the information operations arm, had around 2,000 personnel. And at the time, whoever the dude was that was running it said that they had a minimum of 10 online personas each. Right, 2,000 people with a minimum of 10. And remember, they'd actually started they initially only kind of wanted 500, and then basically people were just too prolific with sharing the truth. They had to then get to 2,000. And that was then. Right now, they have bot farms, and you know how advanced AI is, right? So those 10 personas could also have now AI agents backed up behind them. Like, it doesn't even need to be, the actual person behind the keyboard. So how do you know the person you're speaking to online is true and real? And also, how do you know they're actually real with the way that AI is nowadays and videos, right? I mean, the eyes are usually dead. Like, check the eyes, they usually look dead. But a lot of them are pretty convincing. Okay, 5B. The 2020 plot, my apologies, to kidnap Martian Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer involved huge numbers of FBI informants, undercover agents, relative to the number of genuine plotters. Court records and reporting shows the FBI had heavily penetrated and, in some assessments, actively shaped the group. This is a documented modern example of how far infiltration can go, right? Because we're thinking about deception. 5C. Governments have previously built entire secret cities and industrial complexes that the public had no idea existed. So, for example, we've got the Manhattan Project that created Oak Ridge, Los Alamos, and Hanford, complete towns, massive facilities under extreme secrecy while developing nuclear weapons. Large-scale hidden programs are historically possible. And 5D, infiltration of political and militant groups by security services is a standard historical tactic, right? So COINTELPRO. In the US, targeted the Black Panther, other groups with informants and disruption, British intelligence, long-running penetration of, it's not a word I would have used, of Irish Republican groups. And this isn't speculative, right? It's established practice, right? So, again, how do you know the person stood next to you feeding you the information is not a fakie, right? How do you know the person you're watching on the telly, watching on YouTube with all of this, the conspiracist person that everybody's following? How do you know they're not paid controlled opposition, right? How do you know, right? We have to start with everybody, including me, is deceptive until their actions prove otherwise. And just being arrested doesn't prove anything. Like, it just doesn't, right? Then I'm not talking about like actions. Yeah, I mean, the congruency, there should be congruency, but so number 6, we also need to be mindful of MK Ultra and something, so we have sleeper agents, right? So if you've never read how to create a mind controlled slave, and other books that were done by Cisco Wheeler and Frick Springmeyer, and I know that they have been kind of questioned, but a lot of the information and a lot of what they have compiled came from victims, right? And their explanations, their understandings of stuff. So we know MK Ultra happened. We know huge amounts of the information was completely eradicated. We can't suggest that information is just fake because, the BBC says it's fake, right? So we haven't really. Hey, Edwin. So within the DID programming, right? Because we're exploring all options of who the people might be that are giving us this information. This is important. Within that, there are specific programming. So we have alien programming as a specific one. We have God programming, kind of people who end up in like leading cults, like Manson, probably John of God because of the age. We remember the point of MK Ultra was to create not just mind controlled slaves, right? They were trying to create super soldiers that under interrogation could not be broken, right? That was the race for the super soldier, and it started in the early 1900s, late 1980s, early 1900s. And Germany advanced it. Remember Operation Paperclip? The Americans took lots of the Germans. Remember that the UK was in a lot of the places very early on, swiped a lot of the research. Remember that the UK, the USA, and Canada had the tripartite agreement where they were like, what if it was too hot to do it in the UK, they would do it in America, or they would do it in Canada. And because the UK has the Commonwealth, a lot of the time they would then test it out in Africa, test it out in India. So we would test it out in our colonies. One of the main reasons why they would test it in Africa and the Middle East that we kind of owned was because of the temperature difference, right? When they were tested like that, and this is all of this is documented, right? That we've got lawsuits from veterans. They were doing it on prisoners. We spoke about Fauci's guinea pig kids last week. So we know that they just, We've also got like the whole Aquino stuff and Presidio, and we've got hey, my lovely. Hey, Jean. We've also got, if so, thinking about the timing of MK Ultra and Satanic Panic and the Franklin scandal and Ted Heath, and we've got Elm Guest House, and we've got all of this stuff going on that they then create this whole false memory syndrome, right? So they kind of like suggest that all of these people who have developed horrific trauma, that information was planted by the therapist years later. And this is where I ended up having a huge argument with Grok, because she's like, well, you can't say that because of false memory. And I was like, yeah, okay. But if, how does a therapist, right? This is logic, right? If you fight with an AI, you need to do logic. And it's like, okay, well, how does a therapist, when somebody's 30, create the trauma that, how does the therapist in the 30s implant a memory that affected them when they were 3 and 4 that caused the disassociation? Like that's not possible. So something happened traumatic. Like the therapist didn't do that. They can't do that. And we have to remember Ewan Cameron. So he was the Glaswegian doctor in Canada who did the psychic driving. He had his, there was 200 people that went to him, right? And he like completely wiped their minds. But that was like 10 to 16 hours a day of hypnosis. He was using barbiturates. He was doing isolation therapy, like he was doing deprivation therapy, he was like electric shock, and this was happened over like months and months and months of sustained like abuse in order to like kind of change the mind and implant thoughts, right? Because they discovered you can't actually implant thoughts when the thoughts are already there. The only way to do it was to kind of wipe the mind, right? So his research and the fact that he had to go to those extreme levels completely disregard the concept of false memory. Now, that doesn't mean people can't suggest stuff. If it's in line with your beliefs, you might kind of latch onto it. Eyewitness testimony is routinely like useless and unhelpful because your brain has a habit of kind of like filling stuff in, but you can't convince somebody of something that didn't happen. Like it's not possible. It isn't. You can muddy the waters. There will be some kind of like memory there, some kind of experience, some kind of event that you could then suggest perhaps other things happened, possibly. But this goes back to me kind of talking about my client with the dissociation. If they had the trauma and they were experiencing like severe mental health symptoms, which is why they've gone to a therapist, there was a traumatic event, right? They didn't kind of wake up one day and be like, oh, I'm going to go see a therapist, just see what happens. And then the therapist uncover stuff. Like people were going because of the trauma they had, right? Now, that doesn't mean that when you have like hypnosis, regression hypnosis, you may not have known about the trauma. This is the other thing. You may not have known about the trauma because your brain's very good at covering it up. And I'm going to, talk about those boys again, that group of young boys who were brutalized, and the police found, they found them. There was like tapes everywhere because this is, back in like VHS land. And the police were showing like, and not some of the boys kind of knew, they accepted it, they understood it, but some of the boys like even being shown like, because they needed to be like, and was this you? And they're like, it's not me. Like it's literally them, but their brain has dissociated that much, they just can't accept it. So your brain's funny. However, false memory syndrome kind of came out, and it was their daughter had accused them from abusing her. Yeah. Anyway. So MK Ultra is a possibility. Lots of the people who are alive and kicking today, who are in positions of authority around many of the conspiracy circles, grew up at the age when all of this was going on. So this is a possibility about where the information's coming from. Number 7, narrative control versus free discussion. If you want to steer a large population, the most efficient method is not constant force. It's controlling which ideas are allowed to become socially normal, which ones are ridiculed, and which ones are simply never given oxygen. So free, high signal discussion is the enemy of control. Once people can openly compare notes, test claims and update in public without being immediately punished or by status or algorithm, narrative monopolies become much harder to maintain. That's why genuine open inquiry is treated as a threat by systems that rely on managed perception. And we do get throttled all the fucking time, right? And one of the huge purposes of lockdown was it had nothing to do with flattening the curve. It was to stop people talking, right? Because you shut people down online, you stop people going and having conversations and recognizing that nobody's dropping dead. Right, the COVID narrative would have collapsed without the lockdowns. The lockdowns were necessary to keep the control and stop people having conversations. Number 8, Bandura's social learning theory. Again, this is really important to all the stuff that we're going to be discussing in a bit. So Albert Bandura, this is like the 70s, showed that people do not only learn from direct rewards and punishments, they also learn by watching others, especially others who appear successful, high status, or similar to themselves. So this kind of feeds into like identity again. This is modeling, right? In the information environment, it means often people adopt beliefs, language, and even conspiracy styles because they see people they identify with doing it, not because they independently verified the claims. So social proof and observed behavior shape what spread, sometimes more powerfully than evidence. Okay. So what I also want to just quickly share with you is the what am I doing today? Trajectory of dissociative identity disorder and serial killers, right? Because if we understand that extreme trauma, such as those caused by repeated, abuse, such as that done via MK Ultra, but based on the information we have, right, was purposely done to create super soldiers, right? Then you kind of have to understand some things, right? Obviously, they need to teach them to fight. They need to teach them to defend themselves. They need to teach them to be ruthless, but also they need them to be spies. They need them to have their mind so that it can't be penetrated. So what we end up with is 2 very real results from potential MK Ultra style trauma at an early age. DID and potential serial killers, right? Because you're more likely to be a serial killer if you psychopathy, low empathy, and you may, sociopathy because you're enjoying it. It's sadistic because you're enjoying it and you love it. Because you're modeling the behaviors, you're learning, you're copying, you want to be the person, you want to be the programmer, not the person who's being programmed, right? For sure. Okay, so again, this was part of my argument. So I already know there was a huge spike in DID and serial killers around the time delay from MK Ultra, but from when somebody then grows up. So it tracks from the early. And I didn't tell Grok this is what I wanted to, but this is why I wanted this information. But this is obviously something that I know. So what I asked him was to track over the last century the DID and its previous name. So like multiple personality disorders, and also dual personality, double consciousness, hysteria, like any like dissociation, anything which back in the early Victorian period actually is the same what we're kind of tracking now. Track that plus track serial killers, right? Because this will show us, again, we're looking for, I haven't just decided the MK Ultra exists. I mean, we've got proof, we've got congressional things going on, we've got evidence to prove it, but this helps, again, cement who's perhaps giving us this information. And this doesn't just relate to flat Earth, which we will get to, I promise. It relates to everything. But I literally had to stop watching one of the videos because it was driving me crackers, because all of this was going on in my head that I know. And I was like, this is why I am having such a hard job watching these videos, because I'm just watching I'm watching people manipulating the narrative. And it's very obvious when you know what you're looking for. Okay, so DID. And again, it may not be conscious. This is the point. I'm not suggesting, we may have like plants and infiltration, but we may have individuals who genuinely believe what they're putting out because they were one of the early, they were one of the cohort, right? Okay, so DID, there were, where's the thing? Isn't he done the numbers? Okay, no, here we go. Okay, so DID, 1900 to 1910, low visible, small peaks with interest in hypnosis and dissociation. 1910 to 1970, sharp decline almost to disappearance. Around 200 cumulative cases in world literature by 1980. Roughly 2 cases per decade mid-century, so 14 cases worldwide. Only 14 cases of DID worldwide, 1944 to 1969, right? 1957, there was a little bit of a spike. 1973, 1976, they were kind of talking about it in society. 1980, pandemic levels. We have around 6,000 people in the US alone, around between 20 and 40,000 estimated by 1990. And the average number of alters rose from 2 to 3, which was historical, to 13, 15, with hundreds claimed, right? So not only did the kind of DID thing explode, the number of alters also drastically increased. Then 1990 to 2000s falls off a cliff, right? So you have to remember, like, when was MK Ultra outed? When did we have all the satanic panic? When did we have all the children being abused? 50s, 60s, 70s, stopped, right? And you literally track it, it falls off a cliff. So rapid collapse, 2010 to present, like it's there, but it'll be any adults who've survived and are still alive. So there's around this is what was interesting. In Germany, they have 6.5 per 100,000, whereas the rest of the world has around 4.1 per 100,000. I mean, it's weird that Germany's got more, right? I'm just saying. Especially when you read. Oh shit! Who was the woman who kind of told everybody about being an Illuminati programmer? But then she kind of disappeared off the face of a cliff. Said like 2020 was their end goal. Anyway, she said Germany. It's still like heavily done in Germany. And you go to Germany to get your programming done. Okay, so the second one is serial killers. So primarily from the Radford US serial killer database. Okay. So 1900s, 50 to 55, 1910, 50 to 60, 1920, 60 to 70, 1930s, 50 to 70, 1940s, 55 to 60. And both of those are really low. You tend to see like spikes in serial killers like during wartime because people can get away with it. 1950s, 70 to 95, so it's starting to creep up. 1960s, 200 to 255. 1970s, 500 to 670. 1980s, 700 to 840. 1990s, 570 to 730. 2000s, drops off a cliff. 300 to 440. 2010, 100 to 215. 2020s, really fucking low and continues to lower, right? So when serial killers kind of pinged on my radar with regards to MK Ultra was I was watching an Australian documentary about their first serial killer, and it was randomly the 1960s, and it just occurred to me, like, why did all of these serial killers all of a sudden appear in the 1960s? Because they've been trying to make fucking super soldiers for 20 years before that. So the 1970s, 1980s are consistently described as the high water mark in the literature. After that, numbers fall steadily and dramatically, actually. Supposedly forensics, better reporting, all of those things, right? No. Because if you look at the police and how they actually don't investigate crime, just because there's DNA doesn't mean they find them. I mean, look at all the rapes in the UK. Like, only 3% of rapes are go to court, right? Go to trial. Of that, less than 2% is conviction rates, right? Most of the time, they just tell you to go the fuck home. They don't care. A lot of murders aren't solved. It's not like it's not magic. So we have to have that at the back of our minds. Okay, now I need to skip to the flat earth stuff. Right now that you're kind of on the same wavelength, hopefully. Okay, so right, back to flat earth. So if flat earth or adjacent high strangeness cosmology serves as a long-term distraction, this is my hypothesis, credibility, sync, or sorting mechanism, then the people who become its most visible faces matter. The three broad categories are possible and they are not mutually exclusive. Ordinary paid or directed agitators, influence operators, say 77th style, multiple personas, coordinated messaging and amplification, like paid to play. Number two, sincere believers who are useful idiots precisely because they are authentic and energetic. And number three, individuals who've been more deeply shaped through trauma, programming, or both for high visibility, high commitment roles in the alternative space, right? And that's why we had to kind of delve into MK Ultra and just understand the potential age of the individuals who are delivering the information. So it was still going on in the 80s, but it really started to decline. I mean, in the 80s, they kind of moved away from, pure battery and started using technology. So this is where you get the rise of the Monroe boxes and the gate programs and all of those things that are about creating temporary shifts and not leaving permanent scars, right? Because obviously what was happening in the 80s was the satanic panic. People were speaking out, people were telling people what the fuck was going on because a lot of the people who were abused were now adults and they were able to kind of tell stuff. So they had to change what was going on. It was still kind of happening in the 80s. So maybe anybody 40, 50, 60, 70, we have to kind of bear it in mind. They might be 100% committed to the thing that they believe, but the thing that they believe is created, but it's a narrative that was given to them rather than it was just something that they uncovered and developed. And this is why I always say we've got to be really careful about the politicians and, you know, kind of celebrities and stuff. And everyone, I know that everybody wants to bash them. I get that. But we do have to bear that in mind. Okay, so I did, so just for context, I did take notes when I was trying to watch the videos, but I just got angry. So what I asked Rock to do was to give a structured walkthrough of the main theories, right? So if you've never looked into flat Earth, this is kind of like main theories. Okay, so the Earth is a flat disk. North Pole is the center. Continents are arranged roughly as they appear on the azimuthal equidistant projection. So that's the UN Logi style maps. If you've ever seen that, that's what everybody says. That's the real Earth, right? Antarctica is not a continent at the bottom. It's a surrounding ice wall, a ring that holds the oceans in. The sun and moon are teeny tiny, like 30 to 32 miles across and local, so like around 3,000 miles up. They circle above the disks like spotlights, and their path expands and contracts to create seasons. Stars are either lights on a dome or firmament, or much closer than mainstream astronomy claims. Gravity, as mainstream science describes it, doesn't exist. Objects fall because of density and buoyancy, or the whole disk is accelerating upward at 9.8. I think that must be miles a second squared. All space agencies, especially NASA, are running a deliberate multi-generational deception. Space imagery is CGI. The moon landings were fake. Satellites are either balloons, drones, or non-existent in the claimed form. Things disappearing hull first over the horizon are explained by perspective or refraction, not curvature. So we've got big main players. So Eric Dubey, best known for the long list of 200 proofs Earth is not a spinning ball in 2015. Heavy on the observational claims. The horizon always looks flat and raises to eye level. Water always finds its level. Long canals and railways show no curve. Ships and buildings remain visible when they should be hidden by curvature, etc. Strong anti-NASA and broader conspiracy framing, more aggressive and list orientated the most. Then we've got Mark Sargent, Flat Earth Clues video series 2015. So interesting, right? 2015 onwards. Around about the time they want everybody to be kind of like learned helpless because Trump wasn't supposed to win. Hillary was supposed to win, and COVID was supposed to happen in 2017. I mean, I'm just saying. So more accessible and narrative driven frames it as an enclosed Truman Show style system, focused heavily on southern hemispheric flight paths and times, claims they don't make sense on globe, but they do on a disk. Restrictions around Antarctica. NASA, as the primary gatekeepers of the deception, often presents it as a set of clues rather than finished scientific model. Duran Campanella, Jeranism, and Bob Nodal, Globebusters. More experiment focused features predominantly in the documentary Behind the Curve. Tried practical tests, laser over long distance, high-end ring laser gyroscope to detect rotation, and these are useful because their own equipment produced results consistent with a rotating globe, which created visible discomfort on camera. Other names: Patricia Steer, Dave Weiss, Flat Earth Dave, etc., largely repeat and popularize the same core model with variations in tone or biblical emphasis. Okay, so I said, okay, well, where did the arguments fall down? Like, where do flat Earth people find themselves tripping up? Right? This is just generic, and then we'll talk about like the videos. So the Antarctic midnight sun, so 24-hour daylight in northern summer. So on the disk model, the sun is a local spotlight circling the North Pole. At the outer rim, so Antarctica, it should not be able to stay above the horizon for 24 hours while normal day or night continues elsewhere. Yet the continuous summer sun in Antarctica is routinely observed and has been filmed by multiple independent groups, including recent ones that went there specifically to test this. So some flat earthers have been to test it and then found out that it's not flat, right? Southern Hemisphere distances and flight times. And this was the one for me when I initially looked that kind of sold it. So on the standard flat map, distances between southern cities, so Australia, South America, South Africa, South America, etc., become vastly longer than they are in reality. Like actual commercial flight times and fuel ranges, I mean, match the globe distances, not the stretched disk distances. And this is one of the cleanest quantitative failures, right? The actual time it would take to go from point A to point B does not match the time that it takes to go from A and B in an aeroplane, right? Along the flight paths. So if you map a flight path, like on a globe, it matches like the actual length of time somebody's in the aeroplane compared to if you stick it on a flat. It just doesn't, the numbers don't add up, right? Just that doesn't add up. Gravity, density, and buoyancy. So in a vacuum, we have no air. A feather and a hammer fall at the same rate. Density and buoyancy requires a fluid medium. The explanation also fails to account for why down is consistent in direction all over the surface and why the oceans and atmosphere behave as they do. The upward acceleration alternative creates its own serious problems with the rest of physics. Horizon behavior and measured curvature. So the claim that the horizon always rises to eye level and never drops is simply false once you measure it properly. From aircraft windows, high buildings, or with surveying equipment. So long baseline observations, for example, Lake Pontchartrain, Powerline Towers, Certain Salt Flat, and canal measurements show the drop predicted by curvature. Number 5. Their own higher quality experiment. So the gyroscope testing behind the curve detected the 15% per hour drift that was expected from the rotating Earth. And that's obviously the thing that kind of really upset them. The long distance laser tests also match globe geometry better than the flat prediction. When the better controlled tests are run, the results do not favor the disk. Celestial observations. So different stars are visible from the southern hemisphere. So Polaris is not. The southern celestial pole behaves exactly as expected on a globe. A local slant flat disk model has repeated trouble reproducing simultaneous observations of the sun, moon, and stars from widely separated locations. And internal inconsistency on the ice wall. So if Antarctica is a continuous ice ring that no one's allowed to cross, the model still has to explain that thousands of people who've been to Antarctica, the research stations, the tourist visits, and the documented traverses. The Antarctic Treaty is real, but it doesn't function as a global military seal around an ice wall. Well, actually, it does function as a global military treaty, and it doesn't let random people go there. However, we do have information from early explorers and maps from early explorers that kind of proves that it's not a ring, right? Okay, what are my thoughts on in Ireland? Oh yeah, islands. So yeah, I've got. I mean, half Irish, right? Southern Irish, and so I've got family over there. But I've got friends over there. They are being destroyed. It always makes me consider the depth at which they are trying to destroy Ireland doesn't match the ferocity against Ireland is very different against other countries. So I'm still under the impression there's stuff we just don't know about Ireland as the nation and the people. So I don't know. I mean, they're trying to kill us all, but they're pretty. I mean, so we also have to remember that Ireland is the route into the UK, and obviously the UK is like really pissing them off by like refusing to bow down, pretty much. So it's really easy. Like people jump over. Okay, so there was a video that was 90 minutes long, and I watched an hour. And the reason why I watched an hour, because within the first 5 minutes, the guy was lying, and this lie perpetuated into his entire theory. And he kept lying and lying and lying and lying. And he kept joining things together, and he was very obviously using don't get me wrong, like I call the vaccine people like dumbasses. However, I'm also very sympathetic to the fact that they are brainwashed. Like I get why, right? And not from a like, oh, you fucking brainwashed XYZ. Like I understand it, but it still drives me crackers. And this is why I wanted to kind of talk about in groups and out groups. He, throughout the hour that I watched, multiple times, like, don't worry if you don't get it, like it's fine. People who don't get it, they're stupid, they're unintelligent, they're just dumb, we don't need to worry about them. All of this reinforces, like, if you're starting to kind of investigate flat earth and you come across somebody who in 90 minutes is perpetually creating this in group and out group, and the out group are, you know, in order to attach yourself to the out group, your status is diminished. Like psychologically, like you will reject becoming the out, right? It's a lot easier for you, will be drawn into that because you don't want to be the stupid person, you don't want to be the thick person. Nobody wants to have their status diminished, right? It's a really powerful psychological trick. Now, is he just angry? Potentially. Like, was he just angry? Maybe. I mean, we all get angry, we all get frustrated. However, I looked at his channel, and I looked at his Facebook profile, and on Facebook he said that he's the only true Kabbalist. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Especially when some of the metaphysical claims you've made are just not true. Like, just not true based on what you're suggesting. Like, provably untrue, right? The guy wasn't always kind of talking about unprovable things, like literally saying the reverse of something, right? And I'm going to go into these things because this is why I just stopped. But within the first few minutes, I was like, this guy's lying. I mean, I might be confused, which is fine. But then he just continued and continued. Okay, so here's what made me very upset. The first thing that made me very upset is the fact that he used the Egyptian creation story and said that they say it's a 2D plane of inertia. They did not. That is absolutely not what the Egyptian creation story suggests at all. Right? And that was his fundamental starting point for his entire theory, right? Especially as he then calls himself, like, you know, the only true Kabbalist, right? So he leans very heavily onto, you know, mythology, and this is what we kind of weaves in mythology. I was like, but the fundamental principle you are basing your theory on is not right. What the Egyptian creation story suggests is there's the primordial water, right? The cosmic energy. And it's not a void, it's there, but it's just like fucking all over the place. It's just a big ball of mess. It's got no direction, no purpose, but it's there, it's expanding, it's contracting, it's just insane, right? That's what it believes. And out of that births, like, the sun, right? Ra, like a noon. Noon is the water, right? And out of that births Ra, the sun. And the sun's fucking round, right? Everything that's energetic is round as it comes out, right? As a sphere, right? But anyway, but the actual, what he says about the Egyptian creation story is not true. He perpetually used vortexes. I literally kind of like, I don't know if you can see the drawing. Like, this is where I get really angry. This is like towards the end of my anger rant. He perpetually uses vortex. And toroidal fields, right? Because he's talking about magnetism, which is, fine. We are in an electromagnetic universe. Like, we are electromagnetic humans. The Earth is an electromagnetic, like, thing. But toroidal fields are whole, right? They are an entire thing. They're not cut in half, right? So he was using a vortex and talking about a vortex in the way that you would talk about a toroidal field. Like, they're two very different things. And then anytime he kind of had a toroidal field, he would cut it in half, because that proved his theory, right? Because we have the flat plane and then we have this half a torus, right? But that's not how it works, right? And you can test this yourself, right? So if, because he's talking about magnetics and, poles and all of those things, like, if you get a magnet, like one of the, a long magnet, and then you stick it on a desk, and then you throw iron filings all over the place, it will create a toroidal field. It doesn't stop halfway. It goes all the way around, right? That's like, and hopefully you fucking did that as a kid, right? The minute he kind of cut the toroidal field in, I apologize, toroidal field in half, I was like, what the fuck? What is this guy on? And then he's suggesting that's the gap. He comes up with this whole entire, but his initial premise is wrong, and provably wrong, like by primary school physics-based experiments. He has not got complicated bits of information incorrectly, which you can kind of forgive somebody for, right? 100% you can forgive somebody for, right? But a basic experiment that anybody can do with the magnet and iron filings completely disproves anytime he was showing a toroidal field. If the theory is based on the Egyptian creation story, and he's not talking about the cosmic egg, which kind of comes out of it as well, then he's not, like, he's just lying. So then you have to start working out, well, why are they lying? Why is he lying about things that are so provable? This isn't even, like, don't even get me started on the rest of the nuttiness. But those two things, just those two things, should have had anybody going, the fuck. Also, if I'd have been in the room with him, I'd have probably beaten him with that fucking stick. Like, the amount of times he tapped the whiteboard, right, proving his point, right? And I was just like, if you do this, that's what kind of, like, I couldn't. And I was trying to watch these things while doing stuff, right, as well. So I was trying to, which is why it's like, there's water everywhere. I was trying to wash the dishes while doing it, and I had to keep taking my gloves off to write notes. So I can't. Okay, so he also contradicted himself. So sometimes he was saying, both poles are north and there's no south, and then he said there's no south and there's no north and there's south. So he kind of contradicted himself, right? And I would hope, if this is something and by the time the long video came, he'd already been talking for like a few years. So this is something like if you've immersed yourself in a subject, you're not going to make such a catastrophic error, right? Even if you're emotive. So both north and south he treats as north poles. He said local projected suns created by an electromagnetic induction, and that's the tropical gap, suggests everything is holographic, non-physical, relative to the observer's personal arc of horizon. And this is really important, because when anybody says, like, and this is why I wanted to walk out of the perception class in my undergrad, and they were like, yeah, well, it depends on your perception. So, but how can you test that? You can't. Right? You can't test anything that is purely based on your perception of events or experiences, because nobody else can experiment it, right? So if somebody's theory heavily embeds, and even inside, psychology and perception, there's like a few ground rules. Like people will fall along like a spectrum, and everybody falls along this spectrum. Like it's not open ended. It's not that there are like 10 billion potential viewpoints. So when somebody kind of says, Nikola Tesla proved beyond a shadow of doubt. It sounds like Greta. Oh, Tesla proved that the Earth's round. Is that what you're saying? So whenever somebody will say, you know, and this can't be proven or whatever, however kind of saying, you said it quite a lot about some stuff, but this is just to do with perception. So this may be different for you, right? And it happens quite a lot. It throws doubt, like serious doubt, right? Even if everything else he'd got right, that alone should send the alarm bells, right? Because we start from the premise everybody's deceptive. And for me, 100%. And I'm not here to, by the way, if you're into flat earth, like go for it. I'm just like I said I would look again. And I told you my standpoint. That's where I was, and I was open. But this is what happened last time. I was investigating and I was just like, but what you're saying, like I can literally disprove the thing that you've just said. And I don't have an advanced degree in like physics, right? I can just fucking get a magnet on some iron filings and prove what you've just said is bullshit. I know what a toroidal field looks like. Anyway, it was very heavy into mythology. Yeah. Okay, so the other thing that's really important, so especially because he's an occult, well, it says he's a Kabbalist, so he's a occultist, right? So one of the main phrases in occultism, and it's a really important phrase that you should like have swelling around your head all the time. As above, so below, as within, so without. Right? This is really important because this is proven to be the case over and over again. So what do I mean by this? Pardon me. So especially with regards to atoms, right? We know what atoms look like. We've seen them. And atoms are like mini fucking universes, mini galaxies, right? We have the nucleus, which is like round, doesn't move. And then you have the atom, like you have the electrons and the protons, they kind of spin around it, right? So that's like the Earth. And the planets going round the central sun, right? So atoms, teeny tiny versions, galaxy, big fucking version, right? The Earth is not the center of reality. And it makes me, I actually got tagged. I got tagged in some stuff as well. So now everybody sent me videos, like, you know, people were tagging me and shit as well. And I did have to kind of put like my 10 cents in some comments, because what's happening is people are discovering old books, right? And they're discovering old books and they're like, oh my God, this proves the Earth is flat. It doesn't. It proves they didn't have the same technology we have nowadays. And also, how do you know that that book wasn't written just for shits and giggles? I mean, I totally would if I was an evil overlord, right? Like you want to know what people believe. And I genuinely believe Flat Earth is there to test how brainwashable people are and how brainwashed people are, right? Because if you can get lots of and there has been an increase in people believing Flat Earth, as you know, Christianity has increased because now we have the firmament. Well, it must be flat because people 2,000 years ago believed it was flat. They also believe lots of other crazy shit. That we're just going to ignore all of the advancement. I mean, you know, we're going to bring back the 4 humors. Why not? Right? Oh, okay. Thanks, Jean. So Tesla proved magnetic energy between south and north poles on a magnetic surface, which lead to induction motor. Cool. Thanks. Okay. So the iron filing magnet, right? On a bigger scale. Right. Again, as without, so within, as above, so below. Right. That's really important. So we don't see a magnetic toroidal field on a magnet and iron filings, and then a different one represented in a different context. It's always the same, right? It's predictable. And like, it's not predictable that you could guess what something's going to do if you had no idea about it. However, once you've seen one, they all do the same thing, right? The universe is infinite in its wisdom, but also pretty lazy. So we have so he repeatedly insists the foundational reality is a 2D plane and 3D depth is only illuminated or a magnetic illusion, which directly contradicts the hermetic principle he occasionally gestures towards, right? So says he is a Kabbalist and he understands all of this esoteric wisdom, but what he says contradicts what the actual esoteric wisdom underpins. It contradicts observable atomic molecular structure, crystal lattices, planetary formation, and the fact that nuclei and atoms are three-dimensional. Nature doesn't default to flat planes with occasional magical depth. It just doesn't. We can literally look around and see, right? So we got toroidal fields and magnets. So this is one of the most deceptive parts. A real toroidal field is a continuous donut. Cutting it in half, gluing it to the flat face of whiteboard creates an artificial gap that doesn't exist in the actual field. And now he's talking about the ferrofield, which is the magnets. There is no tropical gap with zero field crossing. And he uses that cut to invent the place where the sun is created by induction, right? So it's just manufactured. The other thing, and this is a really simple thing. I didn't even understand why he was lying about this thing. The infinity symbol, which we all know is a figure of 8 and represents expansion and contraction and the continuous loop of energy. It's not created, it's not destroyed, it just is, and it keeps going, right? And he keeps calling it an S, not a figure of 8, because he forces it into an S curve running through the center of his flat model so the moon and stars can live there. So again, the geometry doesn't match the symbol he is invoking. So why didn't he pick a different symbol? He actually also says, and we can't see expansion or contraction. We don't ever see it. And why? We fucking do, babe. That we do, babe. They test it. We observe it. We see it. You might not. That's fine. If you've never done any kind of investigations into it or experiments into it. But they do. We can. So I've mentioned that he kind of gets confused by north and south. First, there's no north or south poles, only the ends of the earth. Then there's 2 north poles. The tropics are the south poles. The compass is weighted. The arrows deliberately reversed in the south hemisphere to deceive. Real magnetic dip and compass behavior are well mapped. The field emerges in the southern hemisphere and enters in the northern, or vice versa, depending on convention. And the dip angle is measurable and continuous. There's no need for a global conspiracy of differently manufactured compasses, right? You could literally get on a plane from the UK to Australia with your compass and you would be able to test that with your same compass, right? You're not going to get off in Australia and buy a new one with your same compass. Now, if compasses were no good at navigation, they wouldn't have fucking used them for centuries on the boats, right? They wouldn't have known right? So they were using compasses as a navigation tool before we understood the science. People didn't keep fucking crashing. People didn't get halfway around the globe and then all of a sudden their compasses go backwards or stop working, right? So again, this is basic logic and history, like documented history. Like, I don't understand why would you say that? Like, I don't get it. Like, I think this is the thing that confuses me so much. When there's just a wealth of evidence that makes what they're saying utter nonsense, there has to be a deeper reason behind it. Hence me believing it's a psyop. On Einstein, the guy was a fraud. So I'm not yeah. I'm not, yeah. But, you know, so we will he's a bit of a contested character. And some of the stuff that he said, so he's particularly when it comes to, you know, quantum physics and stuff like that, like he just he didn't like the concept of quantum physics, and so he said it can't happen, right? So we again, Einstein, like, what was his job? Like, who was he? What was he designed to do? Was he a paid agitator? I mean, my opinion is he's a paid agitator. But yes, we have actual things that we can do. Like, you can, like, I mean, I'm not paying like a couple of grand just to sit on an airplane with a compass, but if you want to, go for it. Instead, I'm going to lean on the fact that they documented for hundreds of years, people on boats were using it, right, to navigate and circumvent the globe, because we didn't have the technology. We didn't have GPS like we do now, right? That's just like the compass one is just insane. Like, when you just stop and think. That guy worked in a patent office. Yeah, but not in the 1500s or the 1200s, whenever they were using compasses, like, routinely. I don't know when the compass was invented, but, you know, like, for a very long time. They wouldn't have known, right? See, they wouldn't have known. And but again, like, he's probably not the only person to have crazy ideas and try to patent shit. Not all patent again. So again, we have to be careful. But yeah, like the compass one. Oh, Einstein. Oh, did he? Yeah, didn't he rip loads of people's stuff off? Yeah, dodgy character. Okay, so the 360 star charts versus 15% Earth rotation. I didn't really understand this one, but he kept throwing it out there. So, and he was very derogatory to people, suggesting people don't understand time-lapse photography, and according to the realities of the world, he's the one who doesn't understand. Okay, so this is a straightforward misunderstanding of time-lapse photography. A multi-hour exposure or stacked frames records the apparent motion of the stars caused by the Earth's rotation. Over several hours, you easily get full or large arcs of the circle, even though the Earth is only rotated a fraction of 360 degrees. Claiming the Earth hasn't moved 15 degrees, yet how do you get a full circle, is simply not understanding how long exposure works. He threw out golden ratio, Fibonacci, and that proved his model. And I was just like, but it doesn't, because that's a spiral. Like, why are you talking about, like, why are you randomly throwing in, like, and it was just a throwaway comment, right? It was not on the board. It wasn't an explanation. It wasn't, it ties in. It was just, this is a thing that, you know, like, this is a natural pattern geometry that exists in everything. Like, our faces follow the golden ratio. You may not know that. So that it can be mapped across nature. So by him throwing that out there, he's suggesting this is obviously true because Fibonacci sequence fits it, but it just didn't. Like he's saying it confirms the vortex and expansion. Like it doesn't. Like it doesn't with what he was like. There was no. I don't get it. Okay, so rhetorical and psychological techniques. So this is where I was kind of started watching his behavior, right? Repeated framing that disagreement equals low consciousness, stupidity, indoctrination, high pressure social and epistemic control. Then he was saying things like ask the right question, the truth is revealed, ask the wrong one and you get the lie, which is a classic conspiracy epistemology. So any contrary evidence is proof that you asked the wrong question. Continuous appeal to hidden knowledge that's only fully available on Patreon, and the free video is the hook, the real system is paywalled. Mixing real phenomena, so magnetic dips, Darchels, analemma, capacitance, Ken Wheeler, ferrocell demos with invented geometry, so the listener feels they're being given advanced physics. And self-contradiction is papered over with, don't get confused, just follow me, it'll make sense later. Right? And I was just like, wait a minute, you literally just said something like opposite of what you just said. Okay. So then I sent him to the guy called Fittest Flat Earther. So I kind of like skimmed through some of that stuff. Who's got 131 YouTube. Like, how does somebody like 131,000 YouTube subscribers talking twaddle? It's fine. It's fine. Anyway, former high school PE teacher, fitness guy. He says he's exposing the fruitless deeds of darkness. It's flat earth, biblical feminine language, fallen angel, shapeshifters, celebrity identity swapping. And that's when I was kind of like scrolling through. I saw lots of kind of identity swapping stuff. So his is shorter and he kind of uses the standard disk model with the dome firmament, referencing biblical language about a molten looking glass sky, obviously NASA's deception. And again, like the NASA stuff is so provably false. You have to ask why they do it, because you don't control the narrative without controlling the narrative. Right? I don't know why nobody at the time of the moon landing kind of went, how's he on the phone to them? Like, if they're the first people on the moon, then who put the telephone pole there? Because he wasn't using like, walkie-talkie, like radio thing, like radio transmitter, baby could have done it like on the actual fucking telephone. Like it was ringing his nan, right? And then who got there first and put the fucking camera there to watch the first man, right? Landing on the moon. So the moon landing, faked. Why faked? Because the space race was faked and they wanted to show that they'd done it first, right? Because they had to be better than Russia, because the Russians were communists. How can the communists do something better than us? Bearing in mind, when I first kind of looked into this shit, and that's when I discovered like 100% I believed aliens are real, but until that point I didn't believe in aliens. So like I am open to changing my mind. There was that CIA underwater cable tap talking about the exact composition of Mars's Earth, like what the Mars material was, right? We know that Germany had advanced crafts. Like these are like documented things that are all like, now the information's out there. So the entire space race was faked, right? So why is NASA got net like Hollywood level productions on stuff? I mean, if you watch some of the on the space station videos where the the fucking what is it, like the screwdriver like falls, so like, you have to ask, well, why are they doing this? So they are doing this to perpetuate the distrust. And when you don't believe what if you don't believe NASA, it's really easy to kind of jump to you have to jump. It's a really easy jump to, well, the Earth is flat. Because why are they faking the moon landing? Why are they faking the images of the Earth, right? Why are they doing those things, right? Well, they're doing those things because they're fucking psyoping you, because they're controlling you, because they're leading you to learned helplessness, because they're leading us to the point where we're all dead, right? Remember their end goal, the cabal's end goal. And who were the fucking NASA scientists? They were the fucking Nazi paperclip Germans, right? Who will have had the advanced space-based knowledge because they had it, right? They just keeping my tortoise awake. Margaret asked about who was holding the camera for the step on the moon, and I was told it was on the buggies. So then who was driving the buggy? Yeah, exactly. Right. So because we know the moon landing was fake, right? Provably fake. Fucking hello. Like, I mean, seriously. And shadows. I like wind. Like, it just provably fake. Why? Why be deceptive? It's and they led people to the flat Earth narrative because people are fucking arguing about whether the Earth is round or flat. They're not paying attention to the shit that they're doing. But like, Nazis were expert fucking propagandists. Oh, Henry, you shouldn't be up now, baby. You should be asleep. Hold on. Let me just Baby, you're supposed to be asleep, darling. Let me put more. Let me put it up. I mean, if he didn't hate me before, he fucking hates me now. He just went to sleep like 2 hours ago. Yeah, it wasn't real. Well, they can't admit it, right? They can't admit it now. But I mean, it's so obvious. But it just makes it really easy, right? Because then you make that lump, then you make that jump. Okay, so and obviously Grok doesn't agree with me that the moon landing was fake, which is it's fine. I wasn't going to get into that whole argument because I was just like, I just want to talk about this is the focus. So we also got him to do a table of side-by-sides, but it's all the stuff we kind of mentioned already, just so I could like visualize it. So now we have a new thing to be mindful of. Posted today, Brian Rumel, Harvard and MIT researchers simulate the entire planet with 8.3 billion AI personas. It's big. Right. So remember in 2007, they had something very similar, which is like when the holographic representation of everybody kind of came online at the same time as they did the Brain Project, kind of Obama-based stuff. But Mate Matrix, Matraix, with the deliberate matrix nod, is a research infrastructure from a large collaborative team led by people affiliated with Harvard and MIT. Paper went up on AirXIV around the 4th of August this year. Core pieces: Persona 8B, a data set of 8.3 billion digital profiles. Each persona is defined by 1,290 categorical dimensions, so demographics, psychological traits, spending habits, technical literacy, behavioral quirks, lifestyle, etc. Some records are synthetically generated via a dependency graph that tries to keep realistic correlations between attributes. Others are grounded in real human data, biographies, reviews, surveys, consented self-reports. They released a quality filtered core set of around 1 million personas for practical research use. So 1 million people's stolen AI personas are being allowed to be used for research purposes. I mean, they stole everybody's persona, like all the information you're putting into the cloud, right? I mean, who owns it? You don't own it. The companies that run the internet own it. Like, it's in the terms and conditions. So your entire digital personality is now mapped, is now ready to go, and they have the quantum technology with regards to quantum computing in order to use it. These personas are turned into LMM agents, so they are turned into AI-based agentic models, right? So people with independent thoughts that will evolve, that can interact independently, will take on the persona, right? So when I run the Lucian Veil prompt, Grok takes on the Lucian Veil persona that I've programmed in. So now imagine programming an AI with 1,290 categorical dimensions and provable situational examples of how somebody's showing up via their social media profiles. And they can be dropped into 4 environments: surveys, AI chat interfaces, live web browsing, native desktop mobile apps. Researchers have already run 18,000 evaluation trials across 1,000 tasks in commerce, software, finance, healthcare, and 20 plus other domains. In control tests, the agents correctly expressed or suppressed assigned traits 91.5% of the time. So they are 90% accurate to the persona they are embodying. So that your digital twin is so perfected, 90% of the time, it's doing the right thing. It's open source. The researchers frame it as a tool for large-scale simulation, hypothesis generation, and stress testing of products' AI systems before real-world deployment, not as a replacement for actual human feedback. Like, you don't need the humans. Humans are irrelevant. Okay, so this essentially is a population-scale behavioral simulation layer. Once you can run coherent agents that reliably act according to detailed demographic and psychological profiles, you can run test messaging, interfaces, pricing, and narratives against millions or theoretically billions of different people overnight. Explore edge cases and subgroup responses that would be expensive or slow to reach with real panels. Model downstream effects of new technologies or information campaigns across highly diverse populations. You'll also be able to do large-scale testing of influence and response patterns for far more feasibly, right? So they no longer need to tweak and test on live members of the public. You could test an entire continent in seconds based on what you're planning to do, whether it's effective. And you keep running the test until you get the results you want, and then you implement it in the real world. Right? Because we're being psyoped. Then in 2006, 2009 is the Sentient World Simulation. It was a continuously running, continually updated mirror of the real world, a large-scale computer simulation that modeled individuals, organizations, leaders, and society using real data streams so that analysis, US defense, intelligence, homeland security, could test policy options, military actions, or other interventions in silico before doing them in the reality. So they were already doing it since 2006, but the difference between the simulation and AI agentic digital twins will be phenomenal, right? So think of that like the difference between when you used to use a search engine and then you got loads of shit and you had to read the stuff and filter through it and you don't have a clue going on. And now you type something into a search engine and you have an AI scrape for the most important information. It curates it for you. Now you can have AIs literally replying to emails for you, crafting things for you. I've just spent the last week creating an AI based receptionist to answer the phone for me, to triage whether people actually need to be booked into my diary or not, because I get lots of phone calls where like people aren't ready for my service. They don't need my service. They're trying to find the local NHS service. And so like my time is spent like dealing with phone calls which are completely irrelevant, right? I mean, it has to say, and it does say, well, it will say, because it's not live yet, because I keep getting rejected every time I try to apply for a phone number that'll allow me to do it. Based on their, what do they do? What do they call it? So basically the background check. You are not compatible with our services. Your beliefs are not compatible with our services. Anyway, so that will be the plan. So you can, and it baked in, things that it needs to look for, but it will behave autonomously. It's got guardrails. You must not do X, Y, Z. If you hear this type of language, you need to go straight away. Like, please call Samaritans or 999, right? So those are kind of baked in. So there's still parameters, but it's the thing that's going to be answering the phones for me. The hardest part? It was very fucking hard to do it, to link it, to do all the coding on the back end so it links into my CRM or sends the automated branded emails. Like all of that was difficult, but the real difficult thing was trying to find a voice that didn't sound stupid. You're going through, like, I mean, I picked an English one and I picked a girl, because I just didn't like any of the guy ones. And I didn't like many of the girl ones. there was a couple that you're like, this is a really snotty person. I wouldn't want to speak to this snotty person. It's funny, but they're just like the completely made up voices. It's not the same as what we had on like the answer phone messages, which was a person recorded it, right? These are completely made up voices. They don't exist. These voices don't exist. And so now we have voices that don't exist attached to personas that don't exist, attached to imagery that doesn't exist. That's where we are now. To fuck with our minds, the idea of the earth being flat, it's not a stretch to believe that's also designed to fuck with our minds, right? So the S, what did I call it? The S, the Sentient World Simulation, never became fully public, planet scale, open system, the way the Matrix AI is. A lot of the work stayed inside the government contractor environments, but the conceptual goal, a living digital model of the human population you can run scenarios against, is their clear intellectual ancestor of the 8.3 billion persona. There were also related but narrower efforts around the same time. So the synthetic population databases, building geospatially explicit synthetic populations of the entire US for agent-based modeling of diseases, of etc. That's interesting, right? Various large-scale agent-based models for specific countries or regions, so China, Afghanistan, right? So they've been manipulating populations like since time began, and they are just far more sophisticated at doing it now. Yeah, no, it was that one. Okay, so I also had to go on a bit of a tangent. So just for context, because we're gonna run the logic mode. I haven't done it, we'll do it live. So for context, I also uploaded the Secret Doctrine, which is written by Madame Blavatsky. So she is was the leader of the Theosophical Society. She a lot of the occultist staff kind of uses her information, right? So if you want to kind of understand that, that book's useful, right? And again, I was just I'm not, but basically I was I haven't misremembered the Egyptian creation. So I love Egypt. I've always loved Egypt, ancient Egypt. So that was what was so easy for me. And then I was just wait a minute, have I remembered it wrong? No, I didn't. So I went and double checked, right? But she also talks about the point. So the circle, and ancient texts talk about the circle, and the point is the spark. So if you've been here for a while, I always say the Transformers talk about the all spark. That's the energy, that's the spark that is the point, is the decimal point, which she calls it the germ. I never understood why she called it the germ. I think it's wheat germ, seed, maybe. Whereas I kept thinking, why are you calling it a germ, like a bacteria? But anyway. So a germ exists in the center of every atom. Collectively, they form the germ. The ray of the ever darkness flashes into this germ as light of life. So the germ, the seed, is the spark, right? That sits inside the circle. But again, that's the egg, the creation, the energy, chakras. The other thing, chakras are energy balls. They are balls of energy, right? Actual, because he's linking it to ancient philosophy, right? They don't say, they do call them spinning discs, but they also talk about them as not disc, not flat, not like a flat plane, but ball, right? Balls. And then it could be rays of light, but still not anyway. Yeah, none is the chaotic primordial waters. I did remember that, right? Ra, the hawk, hatched from the egg of Seb. The spark is the germ. There we go. Circle, spheres, eggs, and wheels are the dominant geometric language. I also uploaded another older book, and this is this is an opposite, right? Remember me saying when we're talking about references, they got things from both sides of the coin. So this is the universal history from the earliest account of time to the present, that was written by George Faulkner in Dublin, 1744. Major 18th century compilation, which tries to synthesize biblical, classical, and available ancient sources into one continuous narrative of the world. And again, so that begins with cosmology. However, it treats pagan, so Egyptian, Greek, Babylonian, as that's not true, except when it matches, right? So except when it matches, then we're all in on this. But then when it doesn't match, well, they were stupid, they didn't know, right? So we got both sides. And then also I uploaded something called the Kybalion. And then I got distracted because I realized that Enoch, and I mean, you probably realized this a long time ago, right? So it's just because I've never really read the Bible, never kind of done it. I mean, I kind of bibbed in and out, but not I don't know the stories. But there was a specific page. where Hermes is called the god of wisdom. The Egyptians revered his memory for, this is page 18, for many centuries. Yes, tens of centuries, calling him the scribe of the gods. And I was like, wait a minute, isn't Enoch the scribe of the gods? Like, wait a minute. And then I'm pretty sure Metatron, the angel that wasn't an angel that went up to, I mean, and that's from Supernatural, the series, right? So my knowledge comes from wherever I am. But so I was just like, wait a minute, isn't that Enoch? But yeah, so they're just reinventing, they're just changing the names, right? So Thoth is Hermes, is Enoch. Oh, and then I was just asking him questions because he was talking about asteroids and stuff. And then obviously, you know, Jesus is Osiris, but anyway. I mean, do I think Jesus existed? Well, yeah, kind of. The man, yeah. And more so because of the stuff Dr. Raymond says, and they're kind of like original Rosicrucian-y stuff. But yeah, it's interesting how we have the perpetual circles, like over and over again, stuff happens. Right. So now if I share my screen. Okay, so let me swap it around so you get the bigger version. So, okay, so ready to go into logic mode, please. Thanks. Boopity boop, boop. They absolutely should do a model. Well, I mean, the MPs, they're people, right? But see, the MPs are more likely to be MK Ultra program people, so they would not necessarily react like in line with expected human behavior. But if they've got the digital twin, you should still then theoretically know what they may or may not do. But they will be being modeled and mapped and manipulated as well, right? Because only the bloodline matter to the bloodline. Anybody else is like surplus to requirement. They are just useful idiots. Like even, you know, Burnham. Okay, here we go. So what have we got? Hypothesis under primary examination. Modern flat earth theory is deliberately cultivated and sustained intelligence psyops with roots in the 1950s and 60s designed to obscure earlier advanced aerospace capability, including Nazi-derived and Soviet programs. 2, conceal pre-Apollo lunar Martian activity and non-human contact. And obviously lots of that with the disclosure is coming out, right? So when I kind of initially said that in 2020, you could be forgiven for being like she's like lost her rocker, even though I was kind of like going through the CIA declassified files and like kind of sharing it, right? And I always kind of thought it would be a bit narcissistic to suggest that we are the only intelligent life form, especially as like I don't believe we're that intelligent in the entire fucking entire universe. It's extremely narcissistic. But 2020, when I started digging, I started to be like, okay, well, I actually really believe. I'm a believer. Okay, number 3, provide a controllable fringe narrative that absorbs and discredits genuine query into space, consciousness, and institutional deception. And actually, Grok brought up a really good point. If you've got individuals looking into things like free energy, looking into, you know, physics, and there's the guy who does the toroidal mathematics, who is completely like hidden from the internet, like shoved down, and then somebody else has kind of ripped his work off and they've been elevated. All of these things that could shake their control, you can find them, like, because they're sharing the truth, they're sharing the stuff that the actual people who's doing the actual experiments, not the nut jobs. It's easy to like become their bestie if you're an FBI agent or a CIA agent or MI6 or MI5 or whichever, or Mossad, right? Or Epstein's latching onto them because they're about to break through. Like if you look at the way that any emerging technology is bought out by one of the pre-existing organizations who all have back doors to government contracts, right? So you don't, this comes back into the free independent thought. We don't have it. We don't have it. We don't, and you don't have free independent thought on the internet because you can only see the things that you're allowed to see, and the AI will only return the things that you're allowed to see as part of the parameters, right? Which is why archive.org is my favorite place on the internet. Secondary supporting claims: MK Ultra, continuity, DID, serial killer, temporal clustering, programmed assets and alternative media, misuse of Egyptian hermetic symbolism will be stress tested as subordinate or parallel lines of inquiry. Cool. So current posture: default epistemic stance. Every claim, including the operators and the analysts, is treated as potentially deceptive or incomplete until independently tested. Really important. Null hypothesis remains active on all major assertions. Creative mode material is now locked as background context only. No further narrative expansion will be generated unless explicitly requested. So basically, if Grok does something wrong, analysis will proceed claim by claim, evidence by evidence, with explicit diagnostic weighting. Please confirm the order of stress testing. Flat Earth claims, Psyop origin, supporting historical clusters. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. Yeah, just made me really sad. Let's see if there's anything else I missed. No. It's a bit slow today. Maybe he's not getting enough water. Okay, so the Earth's a flat disk with the North Pole at the centre, Antarctica forming a continuous ice wall around outer perimeter. Oh, what's he saying? Proceed with, no, I just want you to do it, babes. That's just I just want you to do it. I don't want to have to deal with it. Okay, so basically what's happening, because there was lots of different threads all feeding into it, is we're going to test each individual thread against, the null hypothesis, because that then enables us to actually then only carry through the information which we weren't able to prove false. Which is where you got to, yeah, if you can't prove it's false, you can carry it through. But if it's just like obvious, like the fucking compass thing. I apologize for keep hitting the microphone. Okay. Claim under test: the Earth is flat disk with North Pole at the center and Antarctica forming a continuous ice wall. Next evidence: Arctic circumnavigation records. Yeah, no. Okay, move to 2, please. I reconsider the far variant, but it forces significant. I can't remember what we're testing. I don't rightly know. Ugh. if anybody has, I mean, just gonna kind of segue a little bit. If anybody has a Suno music account, right? I tried to log back in. I mean, I keep paying them the money. I tried to log in to like make a a bit of music for the beginning. And I logged in, tried to log in with my email address, and then it tried to like start the process again. So I'm giving them the money. My profile's there, but every which way I try to log in, it tries to create a new account. So if anybody knows how to do like lost password, like I couldn't find it, do let me know because it's quite stressful. Okay, so this is multiple surface and aerial circumnavigations of Antarctica has been completed. These voyages and flights treat Antarctica as the finite continent that can be sailed or flown around with a continuous coastline rather than an impassable world enclosing ice wall. Okay, so we're testing this, right? Flat disk is directly contradictory. Globe, predicted outcome. Modified flat model, possible only by abandoning the classic ice wall at the edge of the world. So it is possible, but not in the way that it's presented. Yeah, it's saying it's very stressed. So at the moment, it's just the little independent bits are not necessarily strong. They've got weaknesses that make them fallible. There we go. Yeah. It's very slow today. I wouldn't have done, but I think it's still in expert mode, so it's always a little bit slower. But expert mode is the better one. Okay. The Earth is a flat disk with North Pole at the center and Antarctica forming a continuous ice wall perimeter. So flat disk, routes between southern cities become implausibly long. Globe, it's right. Alternative flat projection, not North Pole centered. Possible, but only if you abandon the flat Earth map. Okay. So it is possible what they're suggesting, but not from the standpoint that they're giving it. Oh. Stellar observations. Oh, no, stop. Nope. Oh, I know. They really need fucking Cassie O'Brien to testify in the MK Ultra hearings. I just wanted to go and pin my... Oops. Where's my profile? Come on, Grocky Walk. Why is everything so unfortunate today? There we go. Pin it. No, stop. I am not paying to pin. Thank you. I'm not paying to boost it either. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we've got a flat disk with single sky dome centered on North Pole. Predicts that Polaris should remain visible. Southern circumpolar rotation is not generated by the model. Globe, it works. Flat model with dual or complex sky mechanisms requires abandoning the single dome architecture used by most flat Earth presenters. Okay, so again, it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Item 5. And remember, when we do creative mode, when we kind of like experiment, like he's not allowed to, and again, Grok's a he for me. He's not allowed to automatically just get rid of things, right? And I had to keep reminding him. So when you're doing conspiracy stuff, You do have to keep reminding him that in creative mode, you're not allowed to decide it's not true. But my biggest fight today was over forced memory syndrome. Because that's... But so you just have to take him on a journey. So in order for me to kind of share with him, like, no, what you're just saying is not true there. I went through you and Cameron. I went through like what we know about DID. Like, so like you can, but again, if you don't have the knowledge about a subject, you will just believe whatever's been shown here. Okay, so this one is the Earth is a flat disk with the North Pole at the center, Antarctica forming continuous ice. What, we did them already? Maybe it's just a second version. Flat disk predicts zero systematic curvature, drop over distance. Globe matches the measured arc length. Horizon drops. Flat model with engineered apparent curvature demands a highly fine-tuned optical mechanism that mimics spherical geometry across centuries of independent measurements. Okay. Cumulative status after evidence 1 to 5 is being completed. Each domain returns a clear negative against the model. The combined weight is severe. Maintaining claim 1 now requires a large set of simultaneous mutually reinforcing special pleadings across geometry, celestial mechanism, aviation performance, and geodesy. So the claim is under decisive observational pressure. Probability mass has shifted strongly towards rejection of the standard flat disk formulation, pending any high quality contradictory evidence the operator wishes to introduce. So basically saying, based on everything we have and everything we know, it doesn't stand up. Local small sun and moon. Okay, claim A2. Oh, I don't. I mean, it's never on a. It's because I've never probably done so many things at the same time. Well, I mean, it was a learning curve. I thought I was doing it all under one banner, but it's in there, right? So again, it says in there, if you have stuff which is a linchpin, something which is a big thing, you have to stress test it independently. But it's doing what I've told him to do, which is important. Because we're doing it scientifically, right? I just want to jump to the end. I would have done this had I known. So I mean, thankfully I can talk lots of shit. There we go. Okay, so we're testing the sun and moon are local, small bodies and move circular paths above the flat plane. We have got where it is right now, the actual model that the school teachers is correct. Okay. Yep. I mean, I should have we could have watched a video in the background. I don't know. Or maybe, I mean, if anybody wants to come on and like, we can have a conflab. I mean, I'm all for that. I don't know how I do it. I think I just I throw a link. For anybody who was kind of on the flat earth train, right? Maybe you've been convinced, right? Again, I mean, I don't mean to be like finger pointing. But maybe something I've said today has made you think. Maybe. I mean, we don't have the full results right yet. I mean, it still could be. It's the flat earth is true, right? It's not boding well. This is the lunar eclipse. 2 independent geometric constraints, both press against the local small nearby sun and moon formulation. The model again requires additional mechanisms that are not part of its basic claim. So it needs stuff that doesn't exist. Yes, please. So basically the model as it exists right now doesn't do the things and doesn't prove the things that people are telling you it proves. They need something else They need actual proof of something else in order to prove that. That just sounded like a giant word salad. But it's like me telling you the sky's blue. Is this going to work as an analogy? Telling you the sky's blue, but nobody ever seeing it. And nobody knowing what blue is. I mean, it's irrelevant, really. But, okay, so then the next one we did was sun and moon are local, small bodies that move in circular paths above the flat plane. I mean, this is what that video guy said a lot. So we've got local sun predicts notable change. Sun recedes towards the horizon. Distant sun and curved earth. Angular size remains stable. Yeah, like the sun would be like bigger and smaller. So local sun and complex. So this is good. He's actually coming up with a potential. So this is the flat earth is saying this. This is what like the non-flat earth is saying. And he's coming up with a potential where a flat earth version could be correct. But again, possible only by adding layers of fine-tuned atmospherical perspective effects that mimic the distant sun and curvature solution. So it is possible, but only if we make it like work the same way as it would if it was round. Okay, yes, please. I might ask him, like, can he just run them? Like, I don't want to skip stuff. How many different, what are we doing? 5 different things with all the different bits of evidence? Sorry. Be like, come back tomorrow. You know, I mean, even I'm running out of things to say. I do apologize. This is, what's the phrase? I mean, other than a fuck up, right? I've learned something new. Okay, so this one, local sun with complex beam shaping spotlight perspective, possible only by adding significant extra mechanisms that effectively create the geography of a distant source of sphere. So again, like it's possible, but only when you kind of recreate, like there's a sphere somewhere. Whoopsie. Yes, please. Oh, there we go. Lucy's pressing the buttons for me now. Well, allow me to press the button. Right, while we're doing this, let's go to X and just see what's going on in the world. I think I can share this as well. I can. Oh, that's fine. I'm sure my device can handle it. I'm not that sure. My device might have a hissy fit. Let's see what's going on in the world. Oh, Saladino. He's the one whose carnival book I bought, which is hilarious because he's called Saladino. Okay, so we've got Grocker is saying this is we're still looking at the small sun. Moves the claim outside testable geometry and into unfalsifiable territory. Ooh, okay, so we'd have to have alternative physics models in order for that to be true. Yep, claim 3. This is perspective and refraction, fully explaining observed curvature, horizon drop, and ship disappearances. Okay. What's this? James Bond producer. No, I don't care about that shit. Right, National Crime Agency. Man who's obsessed by guns has been jailed for 3D printing a firearm. Well done. But they are also, why are they being sued? They're being sued by somebody. I can't remember. Oh. Pakistani politician Chowdhury Rukhsar Ahmed in July. Greater Manchester Police. Oh, isn't that where Burnham was from? Oh, another migrant arrested. I mean, obviously, I only get the ones that I've, my AI is telling me all this shit. But I do confuse it by the random stuff that I look into. Okay, so claim under test perspective and atmospheric refraction are sufficient to explain all observed effects that are normally attributed to curvature of the Earth without any actual geometric curvature of the surface. Okay, so then we've got 5 different things that we're examining. Okay, so this is the most important one. Possible in principle, but demands refraction that reliably mimics geometry. Yeah, okay, it can happen, but it needs to be curved. It needs to create something curved. Let me just share this link, right? If you want to go back through everything, like this is this thread. Okay, next. Trump is no longer recommending Hep B, COVID-19, and influenza vaccines. Good. Good. Then we've got, oh no, I saw that one already. This guy, I don't like him at all. He shot to fame in COVID when everybody else was being shut down. And he shot to fame because he was telling people to go get vaxxed, right? And then all of a sudden he changed his mind. Then he realized afterwards. But, people can be forgiven. But the way that he presents himself, he's a nurse, right? And I'm not saying nurses don't have their place. Like my mum was a nurse. My mum had, medical training, and he's got a PhD. Fine. But when you're in the medical sphere and you present yourself as a doctor, it's my personal opinion is it's misrepresenting. I mean, a lot of the doctors are fucking wrong as well anyway. Okay, so we have got the next one. It's saying flat surface and anonymous curvature mimicking refraction requires a refraction effect that systematically increases with distance in a way that closely imitates the 8-inch per mile squared rule across different atmospheric conditions. Okay, next. Oh, I just don't like a medical professional who didn't realize COVID was a scam and didn't realize the vaccines were dangerous, in my personal opinion, is not to be trusted or reliable for medical things. Psychologists who couldn't see that we were being psyoped and behavior modification tools and psychological manipulation tools were being used shouldn't be psychologists, right? So it's not just him. Like I'm just using him as an example. But if somebody is a medical professional and they couldn't, with the context of COVID, it was circulating in the UK in 2019, right? And people weren't dropping dead. And they were on the front line. They would have known people weren't dropping dead. They would have known people didn't need the ventilators. They would have known because they were on the front line. If they found out via the BBC News that COVID has people dropping dead left, right, and center, and they've been in the hospital in A&E for the last 3 months while this virus has been circulating, and that didn't show them there was a pandemic, but the BBC did, and then they believed the BBC over their own fucking experience, and then they went and got vaccinated and told other people to get vaccinated. This is why my mum... insane. Absolutely insane. Okay, this one is Leveling and refraction still. So flat surface and systematic survey error or anomalous refraction requires either repeated directional error in surveying techniques across different eras and teams, or a refraction effect that reliably mimics the spherical drop over long baselines. Right? Okay, next. What else is going on? Oh, Darren of Plymouth. Earthquakes and volcanoes are everywhere at the moment. This one's in Colombia today. Some terrifying footage of Mother Earth's power. Interesting. Use of nature there, Darren. I would suggest harp, stomp, made to happen technology. I have no idea. Okay, William. Another church was torched in Scotland. Sad. These are just these accidents. These churches that have stood for hundreds of years. I mean, I wonder what's going on for them to all of a sudden self-combust. Like, just, I don't know. I wonder what could be happening. Okay, the next one, we have got perspective and strong selection refraction requires refraction to perform the selective hiding that perspective cannot achieve, effectively making refraction do the work of curvature. So, no. That's also a no. So far, we've got like flat Earth is on 0, non-flat Earth is on like 3. So we've done 5, like 14. So it's like 0, 14 so far. Oh, vote rigging. Oh, wow. We won't be sentenced until 2019. There we go. Look. An intelligence agent's now retired, very senior, looked me in the eye and said, the truth of the matter is we took the playbook for psychological operations and information warfare that we would use against our enemies, and we turned it against the American people to undo the 2016 election and to make sure they didn't elect Donald Trump in 2020. And they got that psychological playbook from the Nazis. So, I mean, they helped create it. Like, let's be truthful. Okay, this one says perspective and strong selective refraction. Oh, that's the same. That's because I read the wrong thing. Flat surface and persistently extreme curvature cancelling refraction demands an unusually strong and stable refractive effect that's not supported by typical atmospheric measurements. No, B. B, please. Oh, and it'd be really easy for them to. Oh, sorry, you don't know what I just read. A nude. Labour's plan to release thousands of killers, thugs, and paedophiles set to be thrown into chaos as probation officers expected to vote in favour of industrial action. And thanks to Angie's little strike thing that she did, it'd be really easy for them to do. Right? They don't even need a set percentage. They don't need to give warning. They can just fucking do it. Oh, look. Biblical foot. I thought we were like drought. Drought. I don't know. Oh, unlicensed biolab linked to the Chinese Communist Party found thousands of vials of blood and tissue. Genetically engineered mice were designed to carry COVID. Tests showing the vials contained COVID, hepatitis. And malaria, I mean, well, okay, so this one, oh, this is testing. Modern flat earth theory is deliberately cultivated and sustained intelligent Psyop with identifiable roots in the 50s and 60s. Mixed organic origin, later opportunistic amplification is in that. Currently the most flexible reading consistent with known influence techniques. Oh, if flat earth is purely organic? No. Interesting. Why has it gone back to the beginning? Did I do something wrong? Ugh. Come on, X. Like they're just saying, everybody, they're already doing this, right? Everybody talking about flower fortification now didn't bother filling in the consultation. I hope you did. They've already been doing this. They just have to report it by the end of the year, right? And everybody has to do it, but they're already doing it. If you flip over your loaf of bread, you'll find it. But it's not just bread, right? It's also anything that uses flour. So chicken nuggets, pies. I love a pie. Pastries, cakes, like anything that uses flour. Like flour's in like pretty much everything. Pasta should be okay because that's a different type of flour, but I don't remember they're going to do it in all the flour. I don't know. Okay, so now we're testing. Which bit are we testing now? Organic survival, later opportunity. So currently the most economic reading existing fringe tradition was available for later narrative use if desired. He's saying a coincidence. Okay, next. Oh, come on, I did 5 bits of. I'm just. Oh, I need to go have my fucking dinner. I thought I'd be done. By. About you, or thought I'd be done as well. I do apologize. I mean, I don't mind if you want to go and do stuff and then come back and watch the recording and just fast forward to the end. It's yeah, I would. Oh, look, public health officials made deliberate decision to underreport the side effects of the COVID vaccines. I don't understand why people don't know this yet. That's what's very stressful. Oh, there we go. Produce and provide UK. There we go. This is non-halal or kosher slaughter. Farmers provide. Oh, let me just type that in. What is that? Produce and provide UK. Produce and Oh. Then is it .co.uk? Yeah. Oh, that doesn't end up with www. Let's put that in as well. No. Produce and provide. Oh, dickhead. Not them, me, because I can't read. There we go. Oh yeah, he still reckons it's a bit of both. Next, please. Oh, it's fine. Okay, so red. There we go. No farmers, no food. Let's drop this. This is that link. Oh, no, Jean, I'm not suggesting that we've not been to the moon. I'm suggesting the moon landing was faked. Two very different things. Oh, we went. I am under the impression, based on the declassified files, like the old declassified files, and the new ones are now kind of proving it as well, is that we were on the moon like long before the like fake moon landing. Yeah. But Flat Earth will use the fake moon landing to then jump to the conclusion that there is no space, right? And we're in the firmament and you can't leave the Earth, and it's just so that's the huge jump that will be made. But I think we went to the moon like a very long time ago, like Colin, like yeah. Like well before, I think the Nazis were definitely on the moon from the stuff that I read. And that's not like somebody wrote a book. That's like from the CIA kind of like files and conversations and wiretaps and like shock reporting to their like, you know, to their bosses. Oh my God, like fuck. Okay, so what are we saying now? Okay, light touch or intermittent steering only. Still possible, but with low intensity from the original claim. Organic. What's this one? Markers of directed maintenance or controlled opposition. Organic fringe tradition with opportunistic media rather than deliberate sustained intelligence operation. Oh, so he doesn't think it is. Yep, last Pete. Yep. But we don't have the percentages yet. That's when we get to know what's going on. I just keep. Does yours do this? Does it keep showing you the same shit over and over again? When you're like scrolling, you find the same stuff like pops up. Ah, yeah. I don't understand why people look over at the Middle East and then like step out and look at people being beheaded, can't go to school, and then think over in the UK it's not going to end the same, and or in the USA it's not going to end up the same. It's just weird. Okay, evidence 5. Still remains possible. Organic. Ooh, under-supported. Okay, right. Yeah, we don't need to use those bits. Okay, so move on to, please move on to step 2. No, not testing the last few claims. We don't need to, because they're not to do with Flat Earth and they're not to do with the Psyop. Maybe it'll be faster. Who knows? Jason Padgett, the accidental savant who says he can see geometric code behind reality. After a brutal attack in 2002, Padgett developed acquired savant syndrome and began seeing the world in intricate geometric and fractal patterns. Movement became sequences of geometric snapshots. Water, light, and ordinary objects seemed to reveal mathematical structures hiding beneath everyday perception. Ooh, today he makes hundreds of videos explaining his ideas about the nature of reality, including his theory of quantum information holography. Yeah, I did say it right. The idea that the universe may be fundamentally connected to information like geometry and holographic projection. What happens when your perception of reality changes so radically that you start trying to reverse engineer the universe from what you see? But then again. There's no flat discs. Okay. So now we've got step 2. We did A's and B's. That's fine. Yeah, that's cool. I'm not. Oh. That's fine. I won't be using it for the next few days. A trans green MSP claimed rape exists on a spectrum. Oh, is this is the person who's not even English, isn't it? Isn't he the person that is from India on a fucking student visa? Like, what a dick. Okay. Tested claims. Yeah, next step, please. I want percentages. That's what we want. We want percentages. Then we can all go and have some food. I need to go and buy cheese. We are having, I don't know whether you saw, my pleasure, sweet. There was a marrow. So we've been growing food, and then other people grow food, and we got given a marrow, and it was like fucking, I swear, it was this big, like it like barely fit in the fridge. And it was like this fat, and I was like, the hell do I do with the marrow? And everyone's like, oh yeah, do stuffed marrow. And I was like, yeah, okay, what do I do with it, like the other 90% of this thing? So we are doing stuffed marrow. Somebody suggested soup. So in order for me to make soup, I'm going to have to make some bread. So that's fine. I will make some bread. Russian potato bread is worth doing. It's really tasty. It lasts quite a while. And it's got like, you put like cardamom seeds in it. It's really, really tasty. And it uses like brown flour, a wholemeal flour. So it would be useful to do once they kind of like folic acid shit. But I need to get cheese because I haven't got any cheese for the stuffed marrow. So here's where we're going. Hypotheses 1, 2, and 3. So number 1, the standard modern flat earth physical model. Hypothesis 2, strong psyop hypothesis. Hypothesis 3, weak and or opportunistic, right? 5% flat earth comes out at. Psyop 10 to 20%, 60 to 75% organic, and then other random shit. Okay, so what we didn't kind of run through with was I didn't do the moon landing, didn't do the evidence that obviously the NASA scientists on the space station are dropping things. So all of those things that will feed into a long-standing directed psyop that we know about. But it would probably move the needle just a tiny bit rather than a huge amount. So it looks like, yeah, but how did somebody organically come up with this random theory though? That's because they would have measured, like a scientist would have measured it and found out it was false, right? Because that goes back to the beginning premise. So I'm not convinced. Yeah, I'm not convinced. And you might not be convinced by the 5% there either, which is fine, right? That this is just we're just throwing shit out there and seeing what sticks. Okay. So backwards checks, key assumptions that were tested. So geometric claims were tested against multiple independent observational domains rather than a single gotcha point. Psyop claim was tested for capability, timing, incentive, and maintenance markers rather than stopping at motive. And had we done the DID stuff in there as well? So I spoke about it, but we didn't stress test it. And because it was a big claim, it needed to be stress tested. So it hasn't been included. Absence of evidence for directed maintenance was treated as lowering probability, not as proof of absence. Organic historical continuity was given full weight as competing explanation. Milestones, mid-19th century establishes the core geometric claim still used today. 1956, Samuel Shenton founds the International Flat Earth Research Society. So we'd need to look into Samuel Shenton. I never asked who I could do a psychological profile on. I probably should have. Lead it, and again, like you can, I dropped the thread in here, so feel free, go crazy. Leadership passes to Charles K. Johnson, modest expansion and media visibility during and after Apollo. Late 1990s, organizational near collapse. Oh, that's interesting. 2014, 2019, major internet-driven resurgence, algorithmic amplification, and broader institutional distrust. So now we have to ask, why would the algorithms start pushing it in 2014? Because at that point in time, the algorithms had already started to deprioritize, because I was building an online business at this point in time. I mean, in 2019, like there was a complete collapse of if you were an independent to kind of rank. Before then, you could, but not like you wouldn't have been page 1, page 2, you wouldn't have been. Yeah. So people were already being censored, like from day dot. Growth has plateaued since 2020. I wonder. It's really interesting, isn't it? That's an extra little tidbit that I should have probably known beforehand, because it might have tweaked things. Okay, so what would I do with that bit of information is I would dig now with regards to the algorithmic amplification changes that he's talking about, who was the key players. Okay, so here, okay. So 2015 was the date given that all of the kind of main flat earthers started to kind of promote their books. I just that does not seem organic. Okay, supporting matrix. So all major geometric pillars failed under multi-domain testing. For the flat Earth, it just doesn't stand up. Psyop claim capability present, timing suggestive, incentive coherent, maintenance markers weak or absent. So strong intentional model disfavored, weak opportunistic model preferred. The original working hypothesis that flat Earth functions as a long-running intelligent psyop designed to obscure earlier aerospace reality of non-human contact is not supported in its strong form by the evidence examined in this session. Okay, so I would have to go to the alien declassified files, all the new disclosure, pump all that in, because that feeds into it. Feeds into my beliefs, right? And then get him to test it, right? That's the point, is I'm not I can now pull evidence and be like, okay, well, what if we add this? What if this is added? What if this is added? And then he will test against, and rather than like I'm not, so again, I'm adding all of these things in my head, and I'm like, these stuff obviously proves it, right? But I'm not the one testing it because I'm biased. He's not. He's designed to be the stopgap. A more limited claim remains viable. An older fringe geometric belief system has been left in place, occasionally amplified because it's useful as a high visibility extreme that raises the social cost of questioning official aerospace narratives. This is weak and more common form of narrative boundary management and does not require the movement to have been purpose-built in the 1950s. Oh, okay. So that's his issue. Is I said that flat Earth was created. Okay, fair enough. Well, that's fair enough. Yeah. That was my hypothesis, that it was created, but I didn't necessarily mean it in like quite such a literal sense. There's no proof. We have got no proof that it was created in the 1950s for what is going on? Why did I get 2 bots at the same time? Okay, so recommended next actions. If further work is required, test specific high-profile individuals. Only if behavioural or documentary markers or direction are produced. Yep. Examine whether any post-2010 amplification events show anomalous coordination beyond normal platform incentives. Well, we know 2014, 2019 was contentious. Trying to kill us all. Keep the physical model rejection as a settled background fact when discussing narrative function. No, that's cool. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. And again, I am so sorry that last bit was strung out. I really thought we'd be like done in 10 minutes and like all be having dinner and going back and then going to bed, right? So thank you for kind of allowing me to just doom scroll on X, but go off on a tangent just to kind of keep things moving along. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed my delve into flat Earth. I will probably have to come back to reality next week with whatever's going on in the real world. But I think maybe people are starting to catch up with where we were before. It just gets boring because you're just waiting for people to catch up, and then the news cycles are just talking about the stuff that we kind of spoke about like 6 months ago. Like that it's annoying. And we don't have any intelligence level information. It's literally all that information's out there. We're just using AI to do a bit of predictive analytics based on the same stuff that the CIA was using in the 70s, but way more advanced. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. Have yourselves an amazing rest of your Monday evening, and I shall see you next week, I think. Potentially not the week after. I mentioned at the beginning, I was a little bit delayed getting that, so I couldn't do that in advance because I was at the vet. So my poor little Loki pooch, who will be 15. He will be 15 in a couple of weeks. Has got a real advanced stage cancer. So and it's like a brain degenerative cancer. So it's like eating his bones and stuff. So so we've got lots of pain medication. We're going to keep him comfortable, and then he will be going to stay with Bruno, our other dog that we lost last October. So and then Smushy, the last one, will probably go soon because he's 10, but he's a mastiff. So we knew nothing prepares you for it. So I may not, but I'll know what's going on more next week. But if I'm not here the week after, that's why. So thank you. Or I might just get kicked off the internet, right? If I do get kicked off social media, most social medias, I'm usually on Telegram tends to be like stable, so you can always find me on Telegram. So thank you so much. Have an amazing evening. Thank you for joining me, and have